Today we are going to talk about the real methodology behind the creatures in Teen Wolf, the chilling secrets behind how they were created, why they were designed the way they were. Now imagine this. You're walking down a hallway, the lights flickering above you, each step echoing off the walls like a heartbeat. You know something is there, but you can't see it. Then it whispers your name. That's the vibe Teen Wolf creators wanted. Not just jump scares, but deep, psychological horror that crawls under your skin and stays there. The kind that makes you afraid to look under your bed, but even more afraid to not look. Because in Teen Wolf, the creatures weren't just monsters. They were metaphors. Every sharp claw, glowing eye, and twisted face represented something real, something we feel. Fear, trauma, guilt, desire. And when the creators built these supernatural beings, they didn't just ask, how can we scare the audience? They asked, what already scares them? Welcome to TV series. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on the notifications bell for more videos. We're about to pull back the curtain on what made Teen Wolf's monsters so horrifying, and you're going to realize the real terror was never the claws or fangs. It was the truth behind them. Let's start with one of the first creatures to shake the foundation of Beacon Hills, the Kanima. Remember that thing? The lizard-like beast with paralyzing venom and a face that looked like your worst nightmare crawled out of a sewer drain? But here's the thing, it wasn't just a cool creature design. The Kanima wasn't created randomly. It was a manifestation of psychological torment. Jackson, the high school jock who became the Kanima, was a broken boy wearing a mask of perfection. The writers could have made him a werewolf like everyone else. But no. He became a slave to another's will. Because deep down, that's how he felt, trapped by expectations, controlled by the image he had to maintain. The Kanima paralyzed its victims, just like Jackson felt paralyzed in his own skin. That's not just horror storytelling. That's emotional warfare. And how about the Najitsun? Probably the most horrifying creature in the entire series. Not because it was the strongest, but because it was the most intimate. The Najitsun didn't claw your face off, it made you go insane. It fed on chaos, pain, and grief like a parasite. And who did it choose? Styles. The human. The one with no claws, no fangs, no super strength. Because the Najitsun wasn't about physical power. It was about emotional vulnerability. And what better prey than someone who always hides behind sarcasm and control? The methodology behind the Najitsun was rooted in Japanese folklore. But it wasn't copied directly. The writers didn't just pull from mythology, they reshaped it. They asked, what if a trickster spirit could hijack a human soul and slowly rot it from the inside out? And that's exactly what it did. It took Styles' face and made it a mask for pure evil. But what makes it even scarier is how real it felt. Have you ever been so overwhelmed with stress, grief, or fear that you felt like you weren't even yourself anymore? That's what the Najitsun is, a monster that personifies that very human feeling. And suddenly, the scariest creature isn't hiding in your closet. It's hiding in your own mind. Now let's talk about the Dread Doctors. Just their name sounds like a bad dream. But these weren't just evil scientists in trench coats. They were designed to be a literal nightmare. The writers took inspiration from steampunk aesthetics, World War II horror, and experimental science to create creatures that were more than just terrifying. They were wrong. Their faces were hidden behind metal masks. Their voices distorted. Their movements inhuman. And that was the point. They didn't kill because they were hungry. They experimented because they could. They weren't guided by emotion, but by pure, cold logic. And that's what made them scary. They were the embodiment of dehumanization. Have you ever felt like a number in a system? Like your pain didn't matter? The Dread Doctors represented that exact fear. That somewhere, someone is playing God with your life, and they don't even care. But it gets even deeper. The creatures they created, the chimeras, were literal patchworks of supernatural DNA. Half werewolf, half Kanima, were coyote with healing powers, you name it. They took people, teenagers, and turned them into unstable freaks of nature. Why? Because they were searching for the perfect vessel. They didn't see people. They saw test subjects. And that begs the question, who's worse, the monster in the woods, or the scientist who builds one? One of the most disturbing examples was Corey, who could turn invisible. Not just physically, but even from memory. People would forget he was ever there. It's like someone took the fear of being ignored, of being invisible in your own life, and made it flesh. That's the level of psychological depth the Teen Wolf team was working with. Even the more traditional creatures weren't so simple. The berserkers, those massive skull-wearing monsters that looked like linebackers possessed by cavemen, were designed based on Aztec mythology and Norse berserker lore. But again, the showrunners didn't just throw them in for spice. They had a purpose. They were used by Kate Argent to do her bidding. Unstoppable, brainwashed brutes. Because what's scarier than a mindless monster? A mindless monster controlled by someone you once loved. And the fact that they wore bones on their faces? That wasn't just for cool visuals. It was symbolic. They'd lost their humanity and wore their death as armor. And speaking of Kate, her transformation into a were-jaguar wasn't just a random upgrade. It was a nod to Mesoamerican deities. But it also reflected her descent into chaos. Kate was once a hunter. Sharp, focused, calculated. But after her resurrection, she became unstable, wild, and unrecognizable. Her transformation was her punishment. Her monstrous form was her inner demons made visible. Even Peter Hale, manipulative, charming, and unhinged, was carefully constructed. He wasn't just a villain. He was a cautionary tale. The alpha who let ego consume him. His werewolf form, leaner, more animalistic than Scott's. Because Peter didn't evolve. He regressed. And his every move was driven by vanity and vengeance. Not survival. Not leadership. So why did the show go to such lengths? Why not just have vampires and goblins like every other supernatural drama? Because Teen Wolf wasn't just about monsters. It was about what makes a monster. Every creature was a reflection of someone's deepest fear, darkest trauma, or buried desire. That's the real methodology. The creatures weren't scary because they were fictional. They were scary because they were relatable. The writers dug into world mythologies, Japanese, Celtic, Aztec, Native American, and blended them with modern psychological horror. They made sure each creature had a reason for existing, a thematic purpose, and an emotional connection to the characters and the viewers. Have you ever felt like you're losing control? You might relate to the werewolves struggling with their rage. Ever felt invisible? You're Corey. Ever felt like you were becoming someone you didn't recognize? That's the Najitsun whispering in your ear. Okay, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Please like, share, and subscribe for more.